Ben holds his boarding pass tightly, his palms sweaty as he stands among a sea of strangers at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. He is 12, and while his parents have talked about this solo trip as a sign that he's growing up, for Ben, it feels like he just stepped into a huge maze meant for adults only. There are hurried people everywhere, rolling suitcases, announcements blaring through the speakers, and every now and then, a quick glance from someone makes him feel out of place, as if everyone is silently checking to make sure he knows what he is doing. In his pocket, Ben carries a letter from his mom, Sarah, gently folded so he can read it whenever he needs a boost. She wrote, "Pick a window seat and watch the hills as you take off. It'll look just like flying over a painting." He clings to that advice, hoping it will help calm his nerves when everything around him feels overwhelming. Ben still feels the warmth from his dad Mike's hug as they said goodbye moments ago, the pride in his dad's face mixing with his own anxiety about missing a step or getting something wrong. He mentally checks his list again. Check-in, line, papers. Everything should be set. But as he looks around at the gigantic terminal, he wonders if he might stumble at some unexpected point. Today, Ben has no idea that his biggest challenge will not be the flight itself, but how he is treated by the very people whose job it is to help him through. As Ben shuffles forward in the boarding line, he can't help but notice how the adults ahead of him are met with smiles and polite nods. Everything moves quickly for them. A few scanned tickets, a couple of friendly words, and they are through. When Ben finally steps up to the gate, the woman at the desk, her badge says, Cheryl, glances his way and her face tightens just a bit. The friendly energy she had with others disappears. Instead, her voice comes out cold and businesslike, her words clipped. "Where are your parents?" she asks, not even glancing at the boarding pass he's holding out so hopefully. Ben stands a little straighter, his heart thumping. He tries to answer that he's flying alone, that his dad just dropped him off and everything is set, but Cheryl hardly listens. Every question sounds more like doubt than routine, and the more Ben talks, the more it feels like he's making things worse. People in line behind him shift their weight. Some look away to avoid eye contact. Others stare at Ben as if he's somehow caused all this trouble on purpose. That heavy feeling sinks in, not just invisible, but like a problem no one wants to deal with. The area, which once felt just busy, now feels downright unfriendly, and Ben realizes in that uncomfortable moment that here, there's no one who's really on his side. Without any warning, Cheryl reaches out and tears Ben's boarding pass clean in half. The sound rips through the air, even louder than the airline announcements echoing from the speakers above. Ben freezes, staring at the shredded ticket in his hands, so stunned he can barely move. For a moment, the world stops. People behind him go quiet, pretending it is not happening, while others pretend not to see at all. No one steps forward. For Ben, the humiliation is as public as it gets, and yet somehow he feels completely alone in the crowded terminal. Cheryl offers no apology. Instead, she just says, flat and dismissive, "I've seen plenty of fake tickets." Her words hang there, cold and heavy, louder in Ben's mind than anything around him. There is no real accusation, just a blanket of doubt that smothers any chance for him to defend himself. For Cheryl, it seems a tiny suspicion is all it takes to cancel everything, a kid's right to travel, even his sense of safety and belonging. Ben's throat tightens, and the feeling is confusing. It is not just embarrassment, but a deep knot of unfairness that feels impossible to explain. The fear Ben feels is not about flying anymore. It is about standing there, exposed, knowing he is being treated like an outsider, like someone who is simply not supposed to be there. Cheryl doesn't stop there. She picks up a phone at the counter and, in a sharp voice, asks for a security officer to come to the gate. The words hit Ben like a cold wave. He squeezes the letter in his pocket, the note from his mom, not taking it out to read, just feeling the creases, as if the paper can shield him from how exposed he feels. Waiting for help to arrive, time stretches painfully. Each second drags, and the air grows heavy with the way everyone tries not to look or looks a little too long. The whole moment hangs awkward and tense, the usual hum of airport noise replaced by a thick silence. Across the counter, a younger employee, his badge says Tyler, stands to one side. He watches the whole thing, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot, clearly bothered. Tyler's jaw clenches and unclenches. He glances back and forth between Cheryl, Ben, and the crowd, wanting to step in, maybe even say something, but years of training about protocol and the worry that he could get in trouble hold him in place. Ben catches the way Tyler's eyebrows draw together in discomfort, and for a split second their eyes meet. In that long, stretched-out moment, Ben understands something new. He isn't just a kid trying to get on a plane. Somehow, all eyes have turned toward him, quietly deciding between the safety of silence and the risk of speaking up. That feeling settles in Ben's chest, an uncomfortable test for everyone here, not just for him. When the security officer arrives, his badge says Officer Williams, the tension thickens. He stands tall, official, and quickly starts firing off questions at Ben, his tone flat and distant, treating Ben like some kind of troublemaker instead of a 12-year-old kid. What's your name? Who brought you here today? Where are you supposed to be flying? There's no warmth in his eyes, and everything he asks feels like an accusation. Ben's words come out small, his heart pounding as he tries to steady his voice. The crowd near the gate grows stiff, all pretending to be absorbed in their phones or talking quietly. But everyone is listening. Officer Williams turns to Cheryl and Tyler and asks for Ben's information. Cheryl hands over what's left of the torn boarding pass, and Officer Williams types Ben's name into his tablet. A tense minute passes, then the officer nods. He's on the list. Everything checks out. Looks like his unaccompanied minor. Service is arranged too. Relief flickers across Tyler's face, and Ben finally lets out a shaky breath. But even with those words, Cheryl refuses to accept fault. She keeps pushing for more evidence, repeating rules as if trying to cover up the mistake. The awkwardness grows, and now a quiet frustration builds among the waiting passengers. Ben notices it. Some people's faces harden, and someone even shakes their head. He's been cleared by the system, but the way everyone is acting, he can still feel the weight of their silent judgment. At last, Tyler gathers the nerve to step forward from behind the counter. Clearing his throat, he addresses Officer Williams and Cheryl in a calm, steady voice. "I checked Ben in myself," he says, making sure to look everyone in the eye. And he followed every requirement. His paperwork was in order, and his AD matched up without any problems. I remember because I double-checked everything since he was flying as an unaccompanied minor. Although his words come out quiet, there's a determination in the way Tyler says them, and it's enough to cut through the weird, heavy silence that's taken over the gate area. Just as Tyler finishes, a woman sitting nearby, her name tag reads Linda, calls out from her chair. "I saw everything from the start," Linda says, her voice just loud enough for the whole group to hear. "That boy did nothing wrong. He's just trying to get on his flight, same as the rest of us." For a moment, the quiet tension at the gate lets up. The support, late as it is, brings Ben some small comfort, like a window opening in a stuffy room. He knows it does not erase what happened, but it does make him realize that sometimes all it takes is a few people willing to speak up for what's right, to start turning things around, even just a little. Right when everything feels like it might spiral out of control, a new voice cuts through the uneasy air at the gate, a calm, steady tone with just enough command to make everyone turn. "I am David, Ben's father, and I would like some answers." There is nothing flashy about the way he enters the scene. He stands back at first, hands in his jacket pockets, but his eyes are clear, and his presence radiates the kind of quiet strength that makes people pay attention without him needing to raise his voice. David steps forward and, with a straightforward nod, explains that he had stayed behind in the terminal on purpose, knowing there had been recent complaints about this particular flight route and its staff. He says he wanted to make sure Ben was treated fairly and to see if the rumors were true. As he speaks, a murmur moves through the crowd, most people only now realizing who he is. It turns out David owns the airline company itself. That piece of news settles over everyone in an instant, shifting the mood. Cheryl, the gate agent who was so quick to judge, suddenly looks nervous. She tries to explain herself now, but it is clear she feels the pressure of being in the spotlight. For Ben, it is the first real moment he can let down his guard. He crosses the line to his dad, and without a word, David puts a reassuring arm around his shoulders. The relief is immediate. There are no dramatic speeches, just that quiet reunion that says everything. In that simple moment, Ben's fear finally falls away, and a sense of calm slides in to take its place. David keeps his composure as he faces Cheryl, his tone never turning sharp. He asks her step by step about what procedures she was supposed to follow for unaccompanied minors and why she felt the need to rip up Ben's boarding pass before confirming anything. He speaks slowly, making sure every question lands solidly, and the gate grows quiet again with each word. Cheryl fidgets nervously, giving hurried explanations about security and protocol, but now her answers falter. She repeats that she thought she saw something off, but her words do not really connect, especially with the other staff and passengers listening. They have all seen what happened, what facts, what doubts, what choices were made, and the difference between a real concern and a rush to judgment is obvious to everyone. Just as the uncomfortable silence settles in, a new figure appears in the crowd. Michael, the supervisor for the terminal, approaches quickly. He reassures David, Ben, and the group that he will look into what took place. He promises Ben will be able to board without further trouble and apologizes for how out of hand things got. The shift is clear. Tension has given way to an awkward embarrassment that fills the space. People seem a bit shrunken in their seats, avoiding each other's eyes. As for Ben, standing there beside his dad, he cannot help but feel changed, like something small but important inside him has shifted forever after all that unfolded in this waiting area. As the printer hums and a fresh boarding pass slides out, David quietly walks over to Cheryl. He stands with her for a moment and then speaks in a low, steady voice so only those nearby can hear. He tells her that what happened here today was not just about tearing up a slip of paper. He explains that the real damage was how Ben, his son, felt when people started treating him like he had done something wrong. David admits how much it hurt to watch Ben be questioned and doubted, pointing out that moments like this can leave scars that do not fade with time. He talks about how a child's trust and sense of belonging are fragile things, much more important than any ticket or piece of procedure. Cheryl does not have anything to say back. Her arguments seem to have run out. The confidence she carried before is gone now, replaced by a quiet regret. You can almost see the weight settle on her shoulders as she faces the reality of what her actions have caused. Ben watches it all from a small distance, feeling a different kind of lesson take root inside him. He sees now that justice does not always have to come in loud bursts. Sometimes it comes out in the quiet, steady way people stand up for one another and acknowledge what is right or wrong. It is a lesson Ben knows he will carry with him long after this flight. David takes a few careful steps toward the main counter, making sure everyone can see he's not out for revenge or drama. He asks Michael, the supervisor, to pull the security footage from the cameras positioned above the gate and requests a detailed written report about everything that happened. His tone stays even and clear. He explains he wants this filed not as a complaint, but as an opportunity for the airline to reflect and improve. There is a heaviness in the air, For several long seconds, no one seems willing to break the quiet, as if they all know this situation is about more than just a missed flight or a bad judgment call. It is about trust, safety, and how authority gets used in busy places like airports, where small mistakes can turn into much bigger consequences. Standing close to his father, Ben feels a mix of comfort and nervous energy. On one hand, he knows David is looking out for him. On the other, he is starting to recognize that what happened here affects a lot more people than just himself. Glancing up at his dad, Ben reads a steady resolve in David's face, the kind of look that says respect cannot be taken for granted and is always worth holding on to. That quiet courage sticks with Ben as he gets ready to board, knowing it is something he will need to remember and carry forward no matter where he is headed next. Inside the plane, the mood is different from what it was at the gate. The crew has clearly been briefed on what took place, and when Ben steps on board, he is met by Grace, the head flight attendant. She greets him by name and offers a warm smile, asking if he would like to take a quick look inside the cockpit before takeoff. The offer is simple enough, but for Ben it means everything. For the first time that day, someone is treating him not as a problem or a question mark, but as a regular kid who deserves kindness and a bit of excitement before his journey. The moment in the cockpit is short, just a handshake with the pilot, some buttons pointed out, and a few light jokes, but it takes the sting out of the morning and gives Ben back a piece of himself. David stands at the entrance as his son finds his seat, watching the interaction. There is pride in his expression, but also a kind of sorrow lingering in his eyes. He knows very well that one nice gesture cannot make up for what happened or how easily trust can get shaken. This flight, which should have been a simple little adventure for Ben, will now always remind them both that respect and a true sense of belonging sometimes come at a painful cost. While Ben is up front, peering into the cockpit and trading a few words with the pilots, David is back in the waiting area, his phone in hand. He takes a deep breath and types a message to the leadership team at Wilson Air, the company he owns. There is no tiptoeing around the issue in his note. He spells it out simply. This incident hit home, and he wants an immediate review of the protocols around staff bias and the handling of kids flying alone. David writes that speeches are not enough. What matters is action. He asks for real training sessions to be planned, not just for show, but to make sure the people working on the ground really understand how much their decisions can affect someone's life, especially someone young who trusts them to do the right thing. Meanwhile, at gate C-27, Michael leans over the counter, talking quietly with Cheryl. He explains, as gently as possible, that what happened will not just get brushed aside. There will likely be a review and maybe even consequences, because what took place cannot become standard practice. Cheryl listens, shoulders slumped, as the reality of the situation sinks in. The terminal feels changed, less like a place of routine, more like a spot where tough lessons are unfolding, lessons that hurt but might just help the airline do better from now on. Sharon, who finished her shift a little while ago, lingers near the windows of the terminal, watching Cheryl gather her things at the counter. She feels a wave of disappointment as she takes in the scene. Sharon has always believed people can make mistakes, but she also knows that there are clear boundaries, especially when it comes to the safety and dignity of children. Just thinking about how Cheryl handled the situation with Ben makes Sharon shake her head slightly, wishing someone had spoken up sooner or done something to stop the scene from getting so out of hand. The quiet between them is thick with everything. Neither of them managed to say when it mattered, each unspoken word hanging awkwardly in the air. Cheryl finally realizes that her excuses no longer convince anyone, not even herself. She starts to open her mouth, searching for any explanation that will lessen what happened, but finds she is only repeating the same tired lines. Around her, the other staff members treat her differently now. She can feel that the loss is not just in procedure points or mistakes logged. It is something bigger, a kind of trust and respect that has slipped away. Still, as she moves to the break room, a new awareness begins to take shape. It may have come too late for today, but it lingers as the airport shifts back to its steady, ever-busy rhythm, promising that some lessons do settle in eventually. As the plane settles into its flight path above Colorado, Ben leans back in his seat and lets his shoulders drop for the first time all day. He presses his forehead to the cool window and scans the horizon, searching for the snow-capped peaks that his mom, Sarah, had talked about during their drive to the airport. For a while, Ben just watches the patchwork of fields give way to rugged mountains far below. The stress and anger from the gate are still there, but up here, above the clouds, it feels easier to breathe and even to hope. It is not that he has forgotten what happened, but the gentle roar of the engines, the soft chatter of other passengers, and the steady presence of his dad beside him all help the world feel just a bit safer. David takes this quiet moment to talk with Ben. He admits that it is normal to feel angry after what they went through, and he feels it too. But he explains, while getting mad is easy, real change takes effort and patience. David tells Ben that the important thing is to keep pushing for fairness, not just for themselves, but so that every kid, no matter what, gets to feel safe and proud of who they are when they fly or do anything else. David squeezes Ben's hand and gives him a small smile, as if to say the hard parts are not over, but they are not alone. A little while into the flight, David hears the familiar buzz of his phone. It is a message from Michael, the supervisor, back at the terminal. David opens it quietly so as not to disturb Ben, who is fixated on the changing view outside. Michael's message apologizes on behalf of Wilson Air and promises that they will take a close look at their current procedures. There will be a proper review, he writes, and the company will put real effort into setting things right. David reads through the words, notes the official tone, and slips the phone back in his pocket. He understands that apologies, especially from big companies, matter, but what truly counts is what comes after. For him, the real responsibility will be seen in persistent action and honest follow-up, not just a quick note during a flight. A few minutes later, an older man sitting in the row behind them leans forward and catches David's attention. The man introduces himself as Frank and quietly compliments Ben's steady manner through the day's trouble. They fall into an easy, thoughtful conversation. Frank shares how he has noticed over the years that kids like Ben often feel pressure to be extra calm and patient just to prove they belong. David nods, and for a moment there is a deep understanding between them that goes unspoken. It is a small but meaningful exchange, where mutual respect says a lot more than any long speech could. As Ben sits back and glances at his dad, a question seems to weigh on his mind. He looks up and quietly asks, "Do you think Cheryl is going to get fired for what she did?" David does not answer right away. He considers his words, then meets Ben's eyes and turns the question back on him. "Well, what do you think should happen? Do you want her to lose her job?" Ben bites his lip, thinking for a long moment. Finally, he shakes his head. "Not really. I just want her to get it, you know. I want her to really see why what she did was wrong. If you just erase people, they never get a chance to change. Learning only happens when you face what you did and understand it." Listening to Ben, David feels a surge of pride. The conversation, simple as it is, shows just how thoughtful Ben can be. He realizes that justice is not always about punishing someone, but about helping them see and do better. As the plane starts its slow descent, Ben pulls out his sketchbook. He begins to draw the jagged line of the mountains, the shape of their jet, and almost hidden in the picture, a small figure behind a glass counter with "Do Better" penciled in the background, his own quiet wish for change. As the wheels touch down in Denver and the plane rumbles to a slow stop, Ben feels a mix of relief and nervous energy. There is a sense that one part of his journey is ending, but something else, maybe bigger, is just beginning. Through the window, he spots people moving up and down the jet bridge, busy with routines they do every day. When the plane doors open, a man with a neon Wilson Air sign and a warm smile stands waiting at the front, ready to guide Ben through the crowd toward the camp shuttle. The goodbye is quick, but it says a lot. David kneels down, giving Ben a steady hug and a promise that they will text every day. Ben grins, puts on his backpack, and follows the staff member. David watches his son's small figure thread through the terminal's steady rhythm until he disappears around a corner, swallowed by the flow of travelers. Instead of sadness, David feels gratitude and a stubborn hope. Today was tough, but it reminded him why he started Wilson Air in the first place. Flying is not just about getting from one city to another. For kids like Ben, it is about being seen, understood, and welcomed in spaces that are too often hard to navigate. 2 days later, David sits at his desk in his Denver office, sifting through the latest updates stacked in his inbox. He pauses when he reaches Michael's report, which is direct but thoughtful. Michael writes that Cheryl has been placed on leave, and starting next month, every Wilson Air employee will join a mandatory training series on bias and inclusion. There is no victory dance in David's mind, no sense of winning against someone else. Instead, there is a quiet peace that comes from knowing a step, maybe small but real, has been taken toward making things better. The change is not flashy, and most travelers will not even notice, but David knows it matters. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. Linda, his secretary, leans in and lets him know Cheryl has requested a meeting. David agrees to see her, but he draws a line, asking Linda to set a 10-minute limit. He does not want the talk to become another drawn-out debate or apology circle. After Linda leaves, David slides open his drawer and notices the torn edges of Ben's note tucked safely. Inside, not to show it off, but to remind himself why these conversations cannot be ignored. For any system to improve, someone needs to keep facing the hard truths every single day. At camp, Ben calls his dad late in the afternoon, bubbling with stories about his first days. His voice is bright as he talks about rock climbing and kayaking, and he shares that he has made a new friend named Alex, who already thinks Ben has the qualities to be a team leader. David listens, smiling, as he hears the excitement in Ben's words and the confidence in his son's tone. David gently reminds Ben that what truly matters is not how people see their last name, but the way Ben acts and the choices he makes. True respect, he says, comes from who you are, not from anything printed on an ID badge. Ben pauses, then tells his dad how he finished a drawing he started on the plane. He describes the picture, Cheryl behind a counter, not shown as a villain, but just as an ordinary person, with the words, "Do better" behind her. David thinks about that quietly, realizing how Ben's way of turning pain into art and art into a reminder means a lot more than any argument. When their call ends, both father and son feel a little lighter. They understand that justice is not just about what happens in the moment, but about what stays with you and how you choose to remember. As evening settles over Denver, David finds himself alone in the office, the gentle hum of the city drifting through the window. He sits quietly, turning over thoughts about everything that happened, from the airport lobby to that short, meaningful goodbye with Ben. What bothers him most is not just what happened to his own family, but the realization that the system allows situations like this to play out again and again, David knows that he was able to push back because he had a voice, a title, and a certain privilege. But deep down, he is aware that many parents and kids do not have someone to stand up for them. That understanding feels heavy, and it is why for him, silence is never an option. Not at an airport counter, not in a classroom, not anywhere. He looks at the note Ben drew and sees it not only as their story, but as a reminder of something bigger. Ben's experience was not a rare accident. It was a sign that things still need to change. David makes a quiet promise to keep raising these issues wherever he can, determined to help build a world where every child can step up, be seen, and belong without fear. For David, that is what it really means to help others fly, to give everyone the right to reach for the sky and to be respected along the way.